could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello everyone, today we're meeting Nico Verresen. He is a former pro Muay Thai champion, a coach, a speaker, and psychologist. Hello Nico, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So let's start conversation by diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. What led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Well, I was 14. I was a fighter. I was a little boy and I was a real boy. The only things I liked to do was climbing and fighting. Really extreme. Uh, but I've had a very hard, it was very hard for me to connect with other people. So what did I do? I started to go dive into books. So there was like this wild side of me that liked to jump from tree to tree, that wanted to fight all the time. And then there was this other side of me that was a real nerd. If I didn't understand anything, I jumped into books. And so from the age of 14, I was in the library a few times a day, a few times a week, reading everybody from Freud to Jung, all kind of psychology, and for sure a lot about intimate relationships. But then, and then when I was 14, I stepped into a Muay Thai gym and I fell in love. It was my first and my biggest love, and I haven't had longer than 2 weeks of not training in, wow, 26 years now. But where I'm now is I'm really passionate about helping people to live their dreams, but without destroying themselves. Because I've seen that there's like in our society the idea that to become successful you have to almost kill yourself. You have to grind yourself until you can't go anymore. It's like the Rocky mindset. No matter how hard you get hit, you keep on going forward. I have a secret for you. Rocky lied to us.
Right. Yeah. So it's been a journey for you, and I see that um, becoming a professional fighter was something very important for you, and you dedicated your life into becoming a professional fighter. And it's coming with a lot of like sacrifices that we do in life, right? And if something becomes a passion, you prioritize it no matter what. You always find time for it. But sometimes, some circumstances in our life could prevent us from pursuing that type of career or that type of passion, not because of our choice, but something could, intervene, I would say. A lot of times we look at it when we are in the moment, we don't see, the other purpose of intervening, that type of, like redirecting us in other direction. But when we're looking back, we know that maybe it was something, something bigger than ourselves that we should look into. Maybe it was sign, let's say, for me to start looking into other direction and apply my skills, my knowledge to help others to also pursue their dreams as well, right? So if you can just look back into that pivotal moment in your life that you decided to go to another direction and apply your skills into something that will help others to reveal their passions as well. Just elaborate more on how you realized that and how did it make you feel once you start doing that?
Well, there are two pivotal moments. The first moment when I was 21, my father died. And after that, I decided to just go for my passion. And I tried to work on the university. I did research. I was an assistant professor. I was doing my academic career. But after 2 years, it It was not just me, because I want to live my passion. So I sacrificed everything, even relationships with very beautiful women. I just put everything aside, and I was just one health, just full on. And then at the end of a long career, I was around 30, and it was the moment I was just gonna break through. I had a contact in upstate New York, Ithaca. I was gonna be the main coach there. The gym was specialized in the thing that I was not specialized in, groundwork and wrestling. And I was going venturing into MMA. And then I was gonna do the Ultimate Fighter, the TV show. So everything was aligned. And then I did my medical checks here in Belgium, and that's when the second pivotal moment happened. And yeah, I went to a medical check. I got my eyes checked, and he called immediately to specialist. I had to go the same day, and I was really afraid because that Monday I was gonna fly to Vegas to do the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
And and then I heard I had two retinal detachments, so my retinas were torn, and I had to have immediate surgery. I couldn't train for 4 or 5 months. I couldn't even run. I couldn't even do lifting. So I went from between 4 to 6 hours a day training to nothing. I was the hardest moment of my life because everything that I sacrificed, and there was a lot,
Mm.
just vanished. I didn't reach my dream, the thing that I worked so hard for, that I trained so hard for. And it took me a few years before I accepted that. Immediately afterwards, I had to do something. But I'm a psychologist too, so I then decided to work with people around burnout, and I started to see a certain pattern that I recognized for myself. That actually the reason that I did not reach my fullest potential, the multiple world champions, the UFC, all these big, big goals, I didn't reach them because I didn't respect my body.
Mm.
It was my eyes were repetitive strain. I got hit very hard, but I didn't care. I didn't care for a moment. I was really lucky, Rocky. That was the way I think. And also, my testosterone levels back then were like 10 times low, like half of what it's now, which is crazy. I'm 10 years old. I'm 40 now. But it was because I was overtraining all the time. And so I was really believing to be successful, you have to work really hard. And yes, I got a lot of initial success. But at a certain moment, your body says, "Oh, it's enough." And I see this with a lot of people too. And then when I started working uh, with female entrepreneurs and directors, but also masculine men, but more women in the beginning, I saw an interesting pattern. That is that the most people that came to me with burnout, they all had or absent or very unsatisfying intimate relationships. And there was something clicked inside. It's really interesting because then I start to realize, well, the reason that you work so hard, you train so hard, that you kill yourself just to, because you have to, you must reach to that goal, is because you want to fill this void inside. And for
Mm.
me, it was clear what the void was. It was the loss of my father. I love that man so much, and just before my first girlfriend dumped me, so I was like completely heart torn, and I just refocused everything on that. I ran away for many years, and so I started to realize, well, there has to be a different way, you know. And so an entire process of working with people, working with myself, doing everything from ayahuasca to meditation to real deep dive into every psychological and therapeutic model I could find. And so what came out slowly is a kind of a structure that has a few pillars that is a bit different than most people. So when people work around burnout, say, "Oh, you have to lower your stress." I think that's absolute nonsense.
Mm.
Because I have a question for you. If you stress, think about the moment you were stressing. Why do you stress? Why do you care?
Yeah, you always think about something that makes you feel that way.
Well, in my eyes, it's because you care about something. Something is important to you. So if you see a lot of people then do a different thing. They start to avoid things, and that that's the realization. Avoidance is the silent killer. When you people always lose themselves in entertainment, Netflix for hours, drinking in the weekend, all kind of things that could be really destructive. But it could be something else too. It could be a pleasure. You'd could go for a drink with your friends and really enjoy the moment, have deep conversations. You can watch a series on Netflix and be absolutely fulfilled. So, me, the difference between pleasure and entertainment is that entertainment is everything that distracts you from life. It's everything that makes you not face life. But pleasure is everything that fills up your cup instead of empty your cup. And so, to me, what I've seen with a lot of very ambitious people is that working can be pleasure, like training was pleasure for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you look at burnout, it's really we have like resources and we have, well, the spending of the resources. But people think much too simplistic about it. And because when I performed to my best, when I had my best moments, my best periods were moments of high stress. But I loved that stress. It was excitement. It was some spice in my life. And I started to realize, but wait, stress sometimes helps you. And then I found the research of Dr. Elia Crum and all her compatriots on Harvard who say, well, yeah, if you believe that stress is good for you, research shows time and time again that it can be good for you. So that's interesting. But
Mm-hmm.
then it was so conflicting with all the research that shows that stress kills you. Like, what now? Now, the interesting thing is that first mindset is a beautiful mediator. If you believe it says it's good for you, it can be good for you. But then I worked with several people that believed this, but I could see they were not really happy. They had to drink at night or take benzodiazepine benzos in order to sleep. So and you could see that when they were spending time with their loved ones, it was not there because they were exhausting themselves. They thought they believed that stress was good, but at the same time they were still suffering
Right.
because the stress didn't came from something that they want. It didn't came from something that they chose. No, it came from something that from themselves they needed to do. They internalized the expectations of the outside world, and now then I will be valuable. But it's like they have like a big black hole in their heart, and they try to put something on between, accomplishment after accomplishment after accomplishment. But the problem with the black hole is that it absorbs everything, and what does then it grows. So it's very interesting. You see it more and more that the more you perform, very often, the less satisfying it becomes. It's really interesting. But then there are those other people who they're nice. And I always think about how's he called again? Branson. When you see him talk, he has like this sparkle in his eye. It's like a big kid that's doing $1 billion games. Big, and for him, at least to me, it's very obvious. He does because he chooses to, not because he has to. So he lives his life based on his values and his needs and his strengths, and see it as a big game instead of something that they have to do. Otherwise, they are a loser if they lose. For him, a loss is all, it doesn't work. It's bad. It's the past. Let's play another game. So so I think it's really interesting.
Wow, yeah, definitely. And I see how a lot of people trying to, kind of fit in society with everything that they are expected to be, or trying to please others and chasing their own thing, when in the end they would not feel fulfilled or accomplished by achieving another type of, I don't know, some kind of like a trophy in some area, right? But rather, if they would focus that energy into fulfilling themselves on what matters to them, like you mentioned, having being aligned with your own values and principles in life that you live by, knowing what is important for you, and really reconnecting with your true self, and knowing that this is something that brings me pleasure, brings me passion, this is what I want to do. So when it comes from your heart and you are clear on what is it that you want to do in life. Because a lot of times when you ask a person why you doing what you're doing, they don't even know. It's like on autopilot. They're already in that pattern, right? And they don't know how to break that cycle. It just repeats every day, and then they feel burnt out, stressed, overwhelmed, not happy, and everything translates in other areas of your life, in relationship, professional, romantic. Then you see yourself being really not happy with your life, with what you have in your life right now. But when you take that responsibility, knowing that you are the one created all of this, if you don't like this, you're the one who can change it too, right? When you have that responsibility, you're getting your power back, and you know that you're the one who can give it to yourself. Because
Mm.
when you see that external validation, and if you need a proof to show yourself that you're good enough, you're never going to find it. The only person who can give that proof to you is you. Don't you think?
Well, I'm gonna work a bit against that. What I believe is that if you have a need for internal validation, you validate only one thing, that you don't believe it. If you need to prove to yourself that you're worthwhile, you don't believe it. It's the only thing you prove. So, but it's a very difficult thing to do, because accepting that, listen, I'm not happy with who I am, with how I react. I'm not living in line with what is important to me. I don't even know what is important to me. And so I believe that it's like this beautiful fine line to say, okay, what can I choose, to become aware that there's so much possibility, so much more options, for sure, for people like us that live in an abundant place, that then there's so much more possible. uh, but yeah, so I work with two types of people: people that need a lot of external validation, and that's actually easier to solve because you have to turn them more inside. But then you have people that have internalized the rules of the outside world, and that becomes an then internal validation. But that's not internal validation, not really. It's an internalized validation. It's not an internalized value system. It's a rule system. They are still slaves. They don't feel free. They can't decide about their lives. It's really interesting, I believe. And what I believe is that when I work with several very high power women, they are so amazing. It's incredible what they can do. They can juggle 1,000 things, but then it's very hard for them to. They say, Nico, I intimidate men. Men are intimidated by me. I say, no, I'm sorry to say, but they're not attracted. And then, ooh, it hurts them deeply, because it's true. Because they have forgotten that little girl inside that wants to play. Because in for sure, in the current, for sure, the corporate world, it is very often like that. More is better. Grind, grind, grind. Be hard. Like, what about your feminine grace? And there's something that I believe that I see when I studied uh, high performance cultures, and when I look at the highest performing teams, very classically, traditionally called feminine traits: the belonging, the attention, the affirmation, the non-controlling way of working together. Those are the teams that get up, that are there, that dare to decide that, but at the same time that feel like a family, and they have high standards. They dare to call each other out. They dare to talk about those difficult things, to sit in that intense emotion without attacking each other. And that's something that I see that's a bit missing in a lot of places, where people, when you have a different idea, all of a sudden you are bad. Instead of to realize that we're both human beings. All of us are biased. Every one of us, every single one of us is biased. That's the task of our brain. And when we acknowledge this, that we are biased, that we can be wrong, and that other people have ideas and that they can be wrong, then we can start to connect. And I believe this is the key to the highest performance, the highest connection that you can have, where you are connected. You stay connected with somebody that has completely different ideas, but you stay connected with the fact that you're both valuable human beings. And by talking and by not giving, not compromising, but staying strong by our ideas, something new can evolve, something can emerge out of that. It's like there's like this pressure cooker, and all of a sudden there's this wonderful soup that you can both drink from.
Yes, and I agree. Connection is very important. And for us to stay connected, I think also another thing is to be able to learn how to be vulnerable, right? A lot of times we don't share our feelings, our experiences with others. We're always afraid of being judged or feeling some kind of guilt or blame. I could come like from our childhood, and we always like close ourselves to others and don't let them in. But the more we become vulnerable and really understand that each one of us have their own journey, and we just need to respect each one of us, and knowing that we can also learn from that person as well, and we have our own perspective on life, they have their own, and if we can just share our experiences, like you said, a lot of beautiful things can emerge from that interaction. And again, like right now we're seeing like a lot of people have their conflicts, and they even can go to something more extreme like having wars. And I think the more we I would say like see the value in other person, the more peaceful we can be as human beings, and build much healthier relationship and community or society at large. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when I look at current society, I'm a bit afraid because a lot of voices have been silent. Then I don't like that. That's very dangerous. Because then there's no communication, and then it's like I always look make the comparison with like the Catholic priests that do horrible things because they cannot do something sexual. And so what happens is that natural inclination gets suppressed. And when you suppress something, it starts to pervert. It's really bad. It's very dangerous. When you have to push down, you have to censor yourself. That's a big problem because then it goes underground, and that can do a lot more harm. While like these days you hear in companies a lot about psychological safety, and you have to feel safe, and the organization has to organize this. I say yes, but this is only the one, the first level. You have four levels. You have the first level is belonging. You're free to be yourself and to really be yourself and to feel accepted and acknowledged. Second level is you have the freedom, you feel safe to learn, in other words, safe to make mistakes, to take risks and make mistakes. Then the next level is that you feel safe enough to bring your own little contribution, that you can give your own little spice on the things. And then the last one that they generally talk about is the challenger psychological safety, where you dare to challenge the status quo, where you dare to say to your boss, I don't like that. It's not right. But that has to be organized through the organization. And I understand that it's a very powerful thing. But they forget a very important, to me, the most essential thing, to me, the essence of becoming an adult human being. That is that internal psychological safety, where where the words of other people are not taken personally, where you can take a step back from your own ideas, from your own emotions, from your own situations, from that of those other persons, and start to again first connect with the other human being, and then you can talk about the ideas for what they are, ideas,
Mm-hmm.
models of the world that you try to co-create. So one of the most beautiful examples that I have, and I don't have a lot of heroes, but this man is my hero. It's Daryl Davis. He's like do you know Daryl Davis?
No.
So he's an African American jazz singer, and he converted more than 200 Ku Klux Klan members
Wow.
by having deep conversations, by building relationships with them. And you can see it, you can find online, it's really heavy. Sometimes what they say, it's so offensive.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see it, and he just starts to ask him more questions. How did you come to those conclusions? He starts to ask him, and he models that, oh wow, he models to them that what they think is absolutely nonsense. But he never attacks him, he just is interested. And you can see that he's connected with the fact that this is another valued human being. Of course, that's a really extreme level of internal psychological safety. But I believe truly that in his partnerships, it's the same thing. You see a lot in love. You meet somebody, suppose you're wine, I'm beer. You do some beer with your wine. I do some wine with my beer until you're here and you feel you're here. You feel you're disconnected. Why are you disconnected from yourself? And then you're so intertwined that there's no passion anymore. Well, yeah, because you're practically making love to yourself, and who wants to do that? And so then people feel like they're on these crossroads where they have to choose between themselves or the relationship.
Mm.
And there are three options: or you stay in here like it used to be because you couldn't really divorce and people lived next to each other. It happens still so many times. Then you have the second thing, which you see a lot these days. They separate, but because they're so intertwined, their hearts are broken, and
Mhm.
then they look for somebody else to do the same thing. So the same repetitive, self-destructive pattern. But then you have the third option, and when you see in psychology, they talk a lot about attachment theory, where the way you were attached to your mother or your primary caregivers is a model for how you are related to other people. And that's true, it's important. Our sense of belonging is absolutely important. However, it's only one side of the equation. We also have our own drive, our need for self-determination, our autonomy, our internal feeling of freedom. We need both.
Mhm.
And so if you're here, you've lost that. You betrayed that. You compromise so much that you start to compromise yourself. And so then what you can do is then one of the two can start to stand up. And that's really heavy because here it's gonna be this person wants to pull you back. So it's gonna be really intense. It's like this pressure cooker. But at the same time, very often, or they run away. But what haven't happened more than often is that they're gonna get a kind of a respect, and then they see you stand non-reactively. You're not fighting anymore. You're just stating what's important to you and what you will accept, what not accept. Then the other person can stand too, and then you're here again. That's beautiful. If you can get through that, I see it in several couples. Then you have two individuals that do not need to be together. Oh, they choose to be together. And then you have this beautiful energetic pulsation where they come close to themselves and to each other. Instead of we together or I have to connect myself, we have to be separated.
Mm.
And so that to me is the sign of real intimacy. That's why I call intimacy a full contact sport. Because it will give you a mirror and show you things that you do not want to see. You don't
Right.
want to see in that mirror. It's so painful because very often your partner will see much clearer than you do yourself. But if you dare to do that, if you dare to confront yourself in the presence of somebody, if you dare to face somebody that is pressuring you to compromise, to give in, and you dare to say no, but without cutting the connection, by keeping the connection, by keeping the awareness of your love for this person, then something really beautiful can happen. And if you look at research, it's really interesting that will create a different kind of passion, less animalistic, less driven by base desires, but like a kind of desire that's a desire that comes out of a deep love, out of this begrudging respect, out of this awareness that you're two individuals, that there's this space to bridge, and this space
Mhm.
creates desire. That's why you see a lot of South Americans or Spanish people fight a lot, and they're so passionate because they know we are separate individuals, and so there's this space to bridge. Now, I wouldn't recommend everyone to start fighting all the time, but to dare to have those difficult conversations and to dare to say no if you feel no and to see if you can find again that pressure cooker that you can sit in together, that you dare to sit in there together, breathing, making room for that intensity, and then having this new mixture of drink that you can drink while you still are beer, while you still are wine, and then together you make something very new, very beautiful.
Yes, and I think a lot of people missing that, and they see how the conflict keeps, growing over years, or they feel separated because, like you mentioned, in the beginning, it was they are merging into something that became one, or like we want to see our partner being a certain way, which he or she is not, and we don't accept that, and we're trying to change or manipulate in some kind of way. Maybe it's our own issues with codependency or some kind of trauma we experienced in the past with other relationship, either with parents or ex-partners, whatever happened. But then we projecting that over and over again in the future relationship without healing ourselves, without really processing what happened and learning from it. But then, yes, if we can come to this point where we're just two separate beings and we have deep love and respect to each other and have that space and the desire that will emerge out of that uh, creative space that we have, then I think it's much more valuable and it lasts longer, because we are not in the space where we just trying to fight or kind of like uh, feeling some kind of missing part of ourselves in a way, but we know we're whole and we know that this person is whole as well, and we don't really need to be together, but I'm choosing to be with you, I'm choosing to grow with you alongside, and I'm respecting your journey and I'm supporting you. And as the same goes for me as well. So together we just kind of like help each other grow, and I think it's much more healthier way of being. And again, like if sometimes we find people coming into our life for a certain period of time, and later on something helps, like something happens and we separate. But I don't know if that's like for us to learn some kind of lesson, maybe in a way. But if we could just accept it as maybe it should be this way for us, maybe we should learn something, but next relationship we can just kind of like work on ourselves first and see what I can bring to that relationship as being uh, a whole person without any need to be with someone else. But if I choose to, I will. So that's very powerful. And also I wanted to kind of like work on like exploring how can we become more mindful of our own thoughts that we are keep thinking on every day. Like sometimes we're just lost in that pattern of thoughts and we don't realize that those thoughts create emotions, and this is how we make our decision based on that, and really it's driving our life without us realizing it. And if we don't become mindful and aware of what exactly are we thinking, it could come to a point where we feel stuck or not happy. So what could help us, maybe some practices or tools that could help us with becoming aware and really seeing the thoughts for what they are without judging them, but understanding where they're coming from? Is there anything that you can kind of suggest or have have us to look into that helped you or your clients to deal with that?
Absolutely. So you talked about emotions. Yeah. Very often people think my thoughts create my emotions, but you have primary emotions. So I make the difference between primary emotions or primary stress that's adaptive. It's there to send you a message. It's your subconscious that says you have to pay attention. When you're angry, when you're sad, when you're anxious, it is there to make you awake. And that's good. That's adaptive. But then we tend to run away. We try to run away, and then we don't listen to it, and then it becomes heavier. And then we have those thoughts that start to sleep in, and then we get stuck in those negative loops. But one of the powerful things is to handle your emotions more is to become really specific. Instead of saying, I'm angry, They can say, I'm a bit frustrated because I feel manipulated. You can become much more precise. The more precise, and you can find a lot of terms around positive and negative emotions. And when you become much more, they call it emotional granularity. When you become much more precise in describing what you feel, you become much more aware of the richness of the whole tapestry of emotional reality. And it's not just I'm depressed. Another technique that you can do for handling that, it's it's to really rate. Suppose you feel depressed or anxious, you can rate several moments of the day. You put an alarm and you rate yourself your level of depression or anxiety, and you can see it fluctuate. So that opens the door for your mind to know, oh, why? Wait a minute, it's not something stuck. It's not just a stamp. No, it's a process. It's a dimension. So that's one thing. But then we have the secondary dimension of emotions, what you just talked about. You have these negative loops. Very often something from the past, of something that we see ourselves, or then self-flagellation because we saw somebody else use that to motivate themselves. And then you get this entire negative spiral. And like you say, it's like we're an automation. We're an automated person. And then we really hate it, and then we try to run away even more. We work like a maniac. That's the people I work with most. But then you have all the people that go into drugs or both, work really hard and then take drugs at night to be able to sleep. That's a pattern that you see a lot for sure in New York, by the way. But so one of the things is we have to learn to dissociate ourselves a bit of our thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. There's a part of you, and it sounds very floaty, but it's something very essential. You are a certain kind of consciousness. There's a part of you that has never changed, that has been aware of everything you experienced all of your life. So that's the first exercise that you can do. You can go to different moments in your childhood, in your teenage years, in your adult life, and very recently. You have like 4 moments that are positive and 4 moments that are negative. And you start to connect with that part of you. You start to connect with that part that observed everything and was unchanged. I call it's the indestructible you, that consciousness, that awareness. That's one. But then the second thing is okay, then those thoughts. Well, I call those negative thoughts ninjas. Why? Ninjas are silent killers. And they can only kill you when they're silent. So one thing that you can do is you can take a pen and paper. And if you're creative, you can take something to draw, or you can take a bunch of magazines, and then you say, okay, for I'm a loser. Okay. Then you can think about a silly name. A silly name. You just think about a silly name and you say, I'm Lily Loser. That Lily Loser is that ninja. Okay. And then you write all these things down. First you write down all your negative thoughts that you can think of. All. Yeah. And then you start to group them around certain themes. And when you look at it, it's very often the same things. Most people say only 1 to 3 themes that keep coming up, that keep plaguing you. Then that's step one. Then step one is you make a list of those thoughts. Step two, you group them. Step three is you give them a silly name. And step four is okay, then you can think about how that kind of ninja would look like. You really imagine it, and you can draw a dart, or you can sing it, depending of what speaks to you to you the most. Or you can take a certain structure that feels a certain kind of way, or a smell. You want to make it as rich as possible, as many senses as you can do. That's the thing. Then the next step is okay. Then we imagine. Then you can do, for example, hypnosis with a professional like me, or you can do it on yourself, and you can imagine that you just lying on a beautiful beach. There's a beautiful tree, those Japanese trees with those little white flowers, and they're all falling in the creek and they're going into the sea. And every time this negative thought is, you imagine, for example, the negative Nelly ninja pops up. You can imagine taking that, put it on such a flower, and it goes away. And you do that, keep doing that, keep time and time. So you're learning to take a little bit of difference to see that ninja for what it is. Because what happens when you look at a ninja like that level, it's like their clothes drop off. They're not so powerful or so dangerous anymore. You see with them for what they are. They're just stupid little ninjas. And so then they go away. So that's a basic practice. But then the most important is, okay, then during the first weeks that you've done this, every time you feel a little bit off, or every time you start to become noticeable, and then in the morning you say, okay, today I'm going to become aware of the negative ninja, the
Mhm.
negative ninja. And then throughout the day, every time it comes up, you just put a stripe and you imagine, okay, the ninja comes up and I blow it away.
Mhm.
And if you want to make it even more powerful, is you take a little bubble blower. You know those bubble blowers for the kids? And you
Yeah.
imagine you blow a bubble around the ninja and then pop, it springs up and it runs away naked. You know, just make it a bit silly. It's nice to make it a bit fun, to see it for what it is. It's just a thought. It can be helpful, can be unhelpful. It's just a thought. You don't need to keep focusing on it. And then you return your attention to what you want to focus on. Now, in the beginning, it's going to be frustrating because this negative now it will pop up everywhere. But if you do it with a little silly bill blower, you're going to really make it less serious than you make it.
Mhm.
And like that, negative thoughts are never going to go away. These patterns are there. They're there. But what will happen is that the impact of them will become much less big.
Mhm.
You start to defuse them, disarm them. Again, it's still screaming negative things there, but you see it, it's just a naked little ninja that wants to run away because it's ashamed, you know? And when you do something silly as that, you start to become aware that you're much more than your thoughts, you're much more than your emotions, you're much more than your worldview. You are that awareness that is intrinsically valuable, that is beautiful, that is powerful, you know? And you have many more techniques to do such things, but this one is one of the most effective ones that I've used with my clients.
Yeah, I think it's very beneficial for us to try. And with making it like a game, like something that we can make fun of, like, and we separate ourselves from those thoughts that popping up, and we know that we in control of either choosing them, accepting them, or letting them go, right? So, and the more we do it, that practice, the easier it becomes for us to really navigate through all the thoughts that coming in, and seeing for what they are, and really choosing for what we want to focus on. And from that awareness, we can redirect our life into, the direction that is beneficial for us, because we chose to. And a lot of times people, they kind of like become victims in their head, that this is the circumstances or events or people, those are to blame for. But really, what is it is it's your decision or your choice to go to that route. And I think the more we start doing it, the more we become responsible of what kind of experiences are we creating for ourselves. And from that space, it would be much healthier relationship that we also build with other people as well. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I'm so glad that we had that time to meet today. And thank you for sharing your thoughts and wisdom. For those who would like to connect with you online, how can they find you?
Well, you can go to my website. It's still in production, toyourtop.com, but we're still, I just changed it. Uh, because like my website used to be Perform with Pleasure. That's how my company is called. But Facebook don't like doesn't like the word pleasure. They think it's something not so clean. So that's why I go back to my first name of my first company, To Your Top, and also on my Instagram, Nico Verresen. Uh, up on LinkedIn is also Nico Verresen. Uh, that are the best places to contact me.
All right, I'm gonna also include in the show notes as well. And as we
Okay.
close today, what would be the thought for our listeners for today?
Embrace intensity, make room for it, because when you make room for it, it becomes the spice of life, not the bitter.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy your day.
I did, absolutely.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.